Sunday dinners were a tradition in my family. Real food, real laughter, people interrupting each other with stories that always ran too long. And for years, I brought my wife into that warmth, proudly. She used to love them. At least, that's what I believed. That night, I'd spent the afternoon helping my mother peel potatoes, crack jokes, and set the table just right. My brother brought the wine, and my sister-in-law baked her famous apple crisp. There was music, clinking glasses, and a warm bustle in the kitchen. Everything felt familiar, steady, and easy. Until it wasn't. We were sitting around the table, full plates in front of us, conversation shifting like it always did, from work to travel plans to old stories from high school. My uncle had just cracked a harmless joke about my teenage haircut, and the table laughed. Lighthearted stuff. Then someone said something. I can't even remember what, but it was about relationships, about how men these days were under too much pressure to be everything at once. That's when my wife looked up from her phone, barely glancing at me, and said with a smirk, "Please. He can't even please one person." She said it as if she were adding seasoning to a bland dish. Casual, like she'd been waiting for the proper setup all night and finally got it. The moment the words landed, the mood shifted. Utensils paused midair. My sister-in-law glanced at me, then down at her plate. My mother blinked slowly, like she wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. And my wife? She just chuckled, sipping her drink with this smug satisfaction. I laughed too, or tried to, not from amusement, but instinct. That self-preserving reflex where you pretend everything's fine so nobody sees you unravel. I made some joke, hell, if I remember what, but it didn't land. I could feel every eye flick to me, then away, unsure whether to join the laughter or step back from it. And she kept going. A little louder now. I mean, bless him. He tries. But not everyone's cut out for multitasking, right? Her cousin joined in with an awkward giggle. I excused myself. I mentioned needing another bottle of wine from the kitchen. My hands felt too warm as I stood, a smile glued to my face. My chest buzzed, not with anger yet, just with that queasy blend of embarrassment and adrenaline that comes when someone slices into your dignity in front of people who used to admire you. In the kitchen, I didn't reach for the wine. I leaned on the counter, stared at the spice rack, and took a slow breath. My ears burned. The worst part? Nobody had defended me. Not even a gentle, "Come on, that's not fair." Just silence. That unspoken consensus that her little joke was acceptable. And I started to think, was that the real her? Or had she always been like this, and I'd been too busy making excuses? I stayed there longer than necessary, not hiding and just recalibrating and thinking back to the past few months. The way she'd started interrupting me mid-sentence at gatherings. Her tendency to correct me in public. Those small digs she framed as just teasing. They had been stacking quietly, and I'd brushed them off like lint. But this time it stuck. When I finally rejoined the table, the room had already moved on. The conversation had pivoted to politics, then sports. But her eyes met mine with a flicker of something. I couldn't tell if it was amusement or warning. I sat down, offered a polite nod, and picked up my fork. I wasn't angry yet, but something had shifted. I ate slowly. I listened. I smiled when needed. But inside, something began to settle into place. Not a decision, just awareness. The rest of the night blurred together. Dessert, small talk, goodbyes. She linked her arm with mine when we left the house, as if the evening had gone exactly as she wanted. Maybe it had, but the moment the car doors shut and we pulled out of the driveway, I didn't reach for the music like I usually did. I kept my hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, and said nothing. She didn't notice. She was already scrolling again. That's the moment I remember most. Not the awkward silence after, but that quiet drive home, where everything between us remained unsaid, yet completely understood. Because while I hadn't said a word, I had heard her, loud and clear, and the smile I'd worn for her benefit, that was the last time she'd see it. She was humming in the shower the next morning. Some pop tune, out of key and out of rhythm, but loud enough to fill the apartment. I was already dressed, sipping black coffee at the dining table. Usually, I'd be making her tea, adding honey exactly the way she liked it. That morning, I kept both hands wrapped around my mug and stared through the window at nothing in particular. When she stepped out, a towel twisted around her hair, she glanced at the empty spot on the counter where her cup usually waited. Her expression flickered, brief, like a misfired blink. Then she turned and walked away, pretending she hadn't noticed. Small shift. Intentional silence. She started her usual routine, dressing while FaceTiming a friend, switching between outfits like she was starring in a sitcom. I watched from the hallway mirror's reflection, still as stone, brushing lint from my blazer slowly, methodically. She didn't greet me. No morning kiss. No, how'd you sleep? We were already on different frequencies. Before she left, she shouted something about grabbing drinks after work with the girls. Usually, I'd ask who was going, when she'd be back, and offer to leave the porch light on. That day, I just nodded once, no words. She waited at the door a second longer than usual, maybe expecting some pushback. When I gave her nothing, she left in silence. By mid-afternoon, the first message came. A picture of her lunch with a sarcastic caption about overpriced salads. I read it, put the phone down, and returned to work. She followed it up with a meme. One of those husbands are like jokes. It sat unread in my notifications for the rest of the day. That evening, I cooked for one. Just pasta and sauce, eaten straight from the pan. She came home 2 hours later, eyes bright, breath tinged with something sweet and fruity. She flopped on the couch with exaggerated ease and kicked off her heels. "I'm starving," she announced, looking at the empty stovetop. "Didn't think to save me any?" I met her gaze, even in calm. "Figured you'd already eaten." She blinked twice. I said I might grab food later. "You usually wait. You also usually say things that don't involve mocking me in front of a table full of people." She stiffened, eyes narrowing just a little, but she waved it off like it didn't matter. "It was a joke. You're being overly sensitive." That's one interpretation. She opened the fridge, found nothing appetizing, and grumbled her way back to the couch. I returned to my book, the one I'd been too tired to enjoy for weeks. That night, the pages felt heavier, the words clearer. The next few days followed a similar rhythm. I rose early, ironed my shirts, packed a small lunch, and left before she even emerged from under the covers. She sent texts, tried dropping in familiar emojis, and short, thinking of you messages. I replied sparingly. At dinner one evening, she brought up a trip we'd loosely planned, something for spring. "We should still go," she said. "The resort has a couple spa package I know you'd like." I kept my eyes on my plate. Wouldn't want to disappoint. I hear I'm not very good at pleasing anyone. She set her fork down too hard. "Are you seriously going to hang that over me?" "No," I said softly. "I'm going to let it be exactly what it was, revealing." She looked stunned for a moment, then defensive. "You're twisting things. It was just a comment." "That kind of comment doesn't come out of nowhere." She stood, crossed her arms. "So what now? You're punishing me with silence? With coldness?" "No. I'm giving you exactly what you seem to want. A man who doesn't try so hard." The silence after that sentence wasn't charged or heavy. It was clean. She left the room a few minutes later, retreating upstairs with a slam of the door. I remained at the table, calm. This time, I didn't rush after her. No speech about respect or effort or love. That night, I didn't sleep beside her. I stayed in the guest room, stretched across a mattress that was too firm, with blankets that smelled like used air and linen spray. My phone buzzed twice, her name, then again with a "Where are you?" followed by "Are you seriously sulking?" No reply. The next morning, she tried a different approach. Came down in one of the old t-shirts she knew I liked. Made pancakes for the first time in months. Set the table, even poured juice into glasses. It all looked like an apology staged for a camera that didn't exist. I walked in, nodded at the spread, poured myself a coffee, and left with a travel mug in hand. She called after me, voice laced with frustration and confusion. "You're going to ignore me after all this?" I paused at the door, gave her a look that said everything she needed to hear. "You stopped listening long before I stopped trying." Then I walked out, and the sound of the door closing behind me felt final, like punctuation on a sentence she never expected me to finish. By the time the third day rolled around, her confusion had shifted into mild panic. I could see it in the way she watched me, curious, unsettled, like she was waiting for some emotional outburst that never arrived. Every routine I once maintained to make her life easier was now missing. And she noticed. Her tea? I left the cabinet open and the kettle cold. She liked the morning news while doing her hair, remote untouched, battery cover off. It wasn't neglect. It was reallocation. On Thursday, she left a note by the coffee maker. "Can we talk tonight? I'll make dinner." In the past, That invitation would have melted tension, opened the door to reconciliation. This time, it barely registered. I folded the note in half, slid it into my pocket, and went about my day. Work felt different lately. Sharper, less distracted. I wasn't checking my phone during meetings, nor was I cutting out early to accommodate her sudden errands or emotional detours. It was like I'd remembered what my life felt like before catering to her moods became the center of gravity. That night, I came home to soft jazz and the scent of garlic butter. She'd lit candles, set cloth napkins, and even placed a flower in a vase. Her dress shimmered in the kitchen light, one I'd complimented in the past. She looked up and smiled. "Welcome home." "Thanks." I took off my jacket, hung it neatly, and sat across from her. The plate in front of me was full, her old specialty, pasta with seared shrimp. She watched for a reaction, probably waiting for the first bite to soften me. I took my time, chewed, swallowed. "It's good," I said. "Still remember the recipe." She blinked at the word still, but let it go. "I thought we could just talk." "Go ahead." She faltered slightly, probably expecting warmth, maybe a glass raised in peace. She clasped her hands together and tried to hold my gaze. "I've been thinking about what you said. About the dinner with my family. I was careless." "Cruel," I corrected. Her mouth tightened. "Okay. Harsh. I was trying to be funny, and it came out wrong." I finished the last of my meal, wiped my mouth, and set the napkin aside. "You weren't trying. You succeeded." The audience laughed. Mission accomplished. A pause. "I'm trying to apologize." "You're trying to undo something that exposed more than you expected." Her brows drew together, voice edging toward anger. "So this is your plan now? Ice me out? Act like some passive-aggressive martyr?" "No." I stood, walked toward the sideboard, and retrieved a small box. Velvet. Familiar. She stiffened as I placed it in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, voice thinner. "Symbolism." She opened it slowly. Inside was my wedding ring, gleaming under the soft light. Next to it was a folded sheet of paper. She unfolded it with trembling fingers. Her eyes scanned the contents. Figures, account balances, assets, my signature at the bottom. "You drafted a separation?" "No." I poured myself a glass of water. "I outlined independence. You said I couldn't please anyone. Figured I'd stop trying and let you lead solo." "You're overreacting. You're underestimating." The air crackled now. Her face paled slightly. She set the paper down, looked up, expression caught between anger and disbelief. "So what? You're walking away." "I'm stepping back. You've had the mic long enough." She rose suddenly, voice raised. "You can't just flip a switch and pretend like this means nothing." "I'm not pretending. You've been doing that for years." The words stung. She flinched. For the first time in a long while, I saw something unfamiliar in her eyes. Apprehension, maybe even regret. "I cooked. I set this up." I reached out. "What more do you want?" I leaned on the back of the chair, steady and calm. "Recognition, respect, restraint. 3 things you discarded before I ever considered stepping away." She stared at me, chest rising and falling rapidly. Her armor cracked right there, in the dim light of our kitchen. I think she finally understood something vital. This version of me didn't need permission to withdraw. He already had. She turned toward the counter, gripping its edge like a lifeline. "So what now?" "You live in your words. I live in my clarity." The next morning, I left early. When she came down, the table was bare, my mug gone, and the ring box missing. She texted mid-morning. "Can we reset?" I replied an hour later. Reset implies returning to something worth preserving. That night, she hovered in the doorway of the bedroom. I was reading, glasses on, a small lamp casting soft light. She whispered, "Are we over?" "Depends on whether you finally heard yourself." Then I turned the page. Let her stand in the silence she once weaponized. And in that quiet, for the first time in our marriage, she looked powerless. By the weekend, the cracks she'd tried to mask had begun leaking into public view. And she felt it. Her texts were shorter, more careful, punctuation cleaner. Her tone, the little I allowed myself to read, had shifted from flirty to formal. Saturday, she tried to reassert control by throwing together a last-minute dinner party. Old friends, some family, mutual connections we hadn't seen in months. Her version of damage control. She cleaned obsessively, prepped dishes she hadn't cooked in years, lit candles like we were hosting royalty. I arrived just before the guests. Shirt pressed, watch gleaming, voice level. My presence was punctual. My demeanor? Disengaged. I moved through the crowd with ease, greeting people warmly, refilling drinks, and even chuckling at small talk. But I kept my distance, physically and emotionally. She noticed. Every time she reached out, tried brushing my arm, standing close, laughing too hard at something I said, I pivoted. Smoothly, politely, like a diplomat exiting a room just before a scandal erupts. By the time dessert was served, the vibe had changed. Guests started catching on. The chemistry that once drew compliments now drew concern. One of her cousins cornered me in the hallway, wine glass in hand. "Everything okay between you two?" "She's been acting. I don't know, different." I smiled. "Maybe she's just adjusting to the new script." He tilted his head. "What script?" "The one where the lead stops improvising and starts reading her lines back to herself." He blinked, unsure whether it was sarcasm or insight. I didn't clarify. Later, I heard her in the kitchen with two of her friends, whispering sharply. Words like disconnected, distant, and weirdly cold floated past the doorway. I stood in the hallway, out of view, sipping whiskey slowly. "He's making me look ridiculous," she hissed. "Like I've done something unforgivable." "Didn't you kind of?" one friend mumbled. "Are you serious right now?" The pause afterward said everything. Even her closest confidants had started re-evaluating the story. Because my withdrawal wasn't chaotic, it was measured, mature, and composed. That made it harder to criticize, and nearly impossible to dismiss. On Sunday, she tried again. Pulled out an old photo album, placed it on the living room table like bait. Flipped to a beach trip from our second year of marriage. "Remember this?" she asked, finger tapping the sun-soaked page. Her voice softened, eyes seeking something familiar in mine. "Clearly," I said, walking past. She closed the album quietly. By midweek, whispers began circulating through the extended family. I received a text from her aunt, someone I'd always gotten along with. "I hope you're taking care of yourself. Heard things have been tense. If you need anything, call." My response was courteous, but the shift was clear. People who once viewed us as a unit now saw sides. And the side, keeping calm, was gaining ground. At a cousin's birthday gathering 2 days later, her sister approached me during appetizers. "Look, I know this isn't my business," she started, but she's unraveling. "Whatever you're doing, it's working." "I'm not doing anything," I said. That's the problem she never saw coming. She gave me a sad smile, then added, "She said you embarrassed her." She embarrassed herself. I just stepped away before I got pulled into it. Word traveled fast. Her friends began texting less. The curated version of our life that she posted on social media, a hand clasped over coffee, snapshots of matching towels, smiling selfies, slowed down, then stopped. One night, I came home to find her pacing by the kitchen island, phone in hand, eyes red. "Everyone thinks we're breaking up," she said. I placed my keys on the counter. "Why would they think that? You're pulling away. You're acting strange, cold." I reached for the mail without answering. She followed me into the hallway. "Are you trying to punish me?" "No. I'm just no longer insulating you from the consequences of your words." Her jaw tensed. "So what now? You freeze me out until I beg." I turned, met her gaze, and replied flatly, "You humiliated me in front of people who care about both of us. And now that those same people are watching you come undone, you want to return to normal? You want warmth from someone you ridiculed?" She tried to respond, but I walked away mid-sentence. That night, she cried quietly on the sofa while I worked in the guest room. I heard the sniffles, the occasional muffled sob. In the past, that would have drawn me to her side, arms ready, comfort automatic. This time, I kept typing. She was learning what dignity looked like when it stopped playing audience to cruelty. And as the lights dimmed across the house, her tears blended with the silence she used to control. This time, it didn't move me. This time, the stillness belonged to me. 2 weeks after that dinner party, her world looked different. The texts from her friends had gone quiet. Her sister stopped tagging her in group chats. Even the cousin who used to defend her in every petty argument had taken a noticeable step back. She tried filling the silence with new routines, morning jogs, social media posts that leaned hard into self-improvement quotes, polished selfies with hollow captions like, "Growth is painful but necessary." But behind closed doors, the mask frayed. One evening, she returned from yoga, face flushed, ponytail loose, mat slung over one shoulder. I was sitting at the dining table, finishing an invoice for a client. Her eyes lingered on the paperwork longer than necessary. We should talk. I kept my pen moving. About what? Her grip on the strap of her gym bag tightened. About this, whatever this is. You've barely looked at me in days. You're sleeping in the guest room. The house feels like two strangers live in it. I finished the line I was writing before replying. I've stopped feeding a bond you starved. She blinked, face draining a little. I said I was sorry. You made a choice to use my dignity as a punchline. Now you're dealing with someone who heard you loud and clear. She walked toward the table, slower than usual. I didn't mean it that way. It was a stupid thing to say in front of everyone. I realized that. You meant it. You'd rehearsed it. The timing, the tone, the audience. That wasn't clumsy. It was surgical. She sat across from me, hands clasped. I thought you'd understand that sometimes people mess up. I pushed the paperwork aside, meeting her eyes fully for the first time in days. Understanding is one thing. Repairing is another. That takes humility. Her voice cracked slightly. What do you want me to do? I stood, crossed the room to the cabinet, and returned with a small manila envelope. Inside, a single-page document. I placed it on the table. She didn't touch it. What's this? A clean slate. Her hand hovered over the flap before peeling it open. Her eyes scanned the page slowly, jaw tensing midway. This is a separation agreement. Yes. You're serious? I've spent years being the man you introduced with pride. I've carried weight, held space, and built a life around partnership. And then, in one sentence, you reduced me to an inconvenience. Tears welled. I didn't mean to destroy us. You didn't destroy us, I replied. You revealed us. She stood up suddenly, voice trembling. So that's it. One mistake and you're done? I gave her a long look. This wasn't about one comment. It was about a pattern you finally stopped hiding. She moved to the window, looking out at the street lamp flickering across the sidewalk. You used to fight for us. You used to believe in what we had. I used to believe I was respected. That belief is gone. Silence stretched between us. Eventually, she turned, cheeks wet, voice lower. Is there someone else? No, there's just someone new in the mirror. She let out a shaky laugh, bitter and soft. She must be better than I. She values peace over power. That's all. The next morning, she asked if we could delay filing. Give it a week, she said. Let me try to fix this. I gave her a gentle nod. Take all the time you need. I'll be moving out today. Her expression broke then. The kind of shatter that comes from knowing the damage is absolute and final. She reached out, grasped my hand with both of hers. Please, just one more chance. I looked at her, really looked. The woman who used to walk into a room and light it up had dimmed into someone always seeking validation from others, even at the cost of the person beside her. You had years of chances. You used your last one on a laugh. The car ride away from the apartment held a strange calm. My phone buzzed once, her name. I let it ring. A block later, it buzzed again. This time, a message, you're making a mistake. I pulled over, opened it, stared for a long moment. Then typed, you made it first. I just gave it meaning. Weeks passed. She kept trying. Emails, mutual friends delivering messages, photos sent from albums we'd forgotten existed. Each time, I remained silent. Closure isn't loud. It doesn't come from a dramatic speech or a final kiss in the rain. It arrives in moments like those, in quiet conviction, in boundaries held, in knowing you refuse to be reduced. Months later, I ran into one of her cousins at a bookstore. She smiled, nodded, then leaned in with curiosity. She's still talking about that night. I raised an eyebrow. The dinner? No. The moment, everything flipped. Said your face was unreadable, but your silence? Priceless. I smiled, then turned the page of the book in my hand. Sometimes the most satisfying victories are the ones without applause.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.